Hello. Today's lesson is about the beginning of magical history. There are multiple theories about the beginning of magic. That means we aren't quite sure what happened. There are three main theories. The theory of uno mas, the migration theory, and the theory of Hocus Pocus. The theory of uno mas is that all wizards, witches and vixen are related to the first magical person, uno mas. According to the theory, magic started with Uno and was passed on to their children and their children's children and so on. Uno mas is said to have lived in the time of the great reptiles, also known as the dinosaurs. Uno did look a little bit different from the modern witch and wizard. It is said Uno was of stocky build with long limbs. Some historians also believe trolls are descended from Uno mas, but evolved differently and still resemble Uno somewhat. In this time, people didn't use words like we do, but we communicated more with grunts and gestures. Uno mas, however, was different. Uno would use wood and stone to make tools and started to invent things, like the first wand. There are several theories of where the first wand came from. Some say it came from the first ever bonfire, or that it came from a very old tree when Uno wanted to get fruit but couldn't reach it. In anger, Uno shook the tree and the fruit and wand fell out. For certain where the first wand came from, we are not. The Uno mas theory was first presented by archaeologist William Morang. However, not everyone agrees with this theory. Like Josiah Loppet, who wrote a counterbook on the Uno mas theory called The Anti-Uno mas Theory. Josiah Loppet said, "Those who support the suggestions found in the theory of Uno mas mistakenly claim we lived amongst the dinosaurs. If this claim were to be true, then our relations to such ancestry should worry even the most liberal of conservatives." The migration theory is a theory in which magical people lived amongst non-magical people until a natural disaster happened, called the Descent of Bliss, also known as the Ice Age. According to the theory, it was during these harsh circumstances the magical people discovered their special abilities and eventually separated from non-magical people. There are two pieces of evidence for the migration theory. In 1535, Ho Mao Tseng found several magical manuscripts while following the tracks of a group of people in the Swiss Alps. The trail, however, went cold. Most likely the people died in an avalanche. Years later, in the early 1800s, the trail was rediscovered by a group of curse breakers. And with the new spell, Venite Incantatem, the old protective hiding spells were broken. An underground chamber was found with magical artifacts, like a vanishing cloak with the dirical feathers and unicorn horn made into necklaces. Previously, it was believed that the people died in an avalanche, but no bodies were found in the underground chamber, so it is thought that the members simply left the tunnel and went different places. An important note is that the migration theory was the first theory to claim there is a natural progression in magic, even though the theory of Hocus Pocus was the first to tentatively bring up the idea of natural progression. The theory of Hocus Pocus doesn't focus on a person, like in the Uno mas theory, or a group of people, like the migration theory, but on the first instance of magic. An ancient tree bark, the birch bark manuscript, was found with a story on it about how men and women found partners in ancient times. It was said that women had to persuade a giant man-eating lizard to give to her preferred partner as an offer of partnership. Naturally, the women with the greatest power of persuasion got the best men. This quality of persuasion was therefore stimulated and grew to be what is magic now. The idea is that magic grew from a natural progression of magical tendencies, meaning that certain habits were preferable and therefore stimulated. The birchbark manuscript is a very important piece of evidence for the theory of Hocus Pocus. The manuscript is stored at the Brussels Museum of Ancient Magical History and is kept by Professor Hugo Björken. Now, on to the essay. Let's look at the essay prompt. After reading about 3 theories of the origin of magic, which theory do you feel is most likely and why? Make sure you provide at least 2 reasons why. Additionally, be sure to answer these questions in no fewer than 200 words. If you have any questions, please reach out to me via OWL or my PAs. This essay is just about your opinion, so there are no right or wrongs for this one. There are, however, a couple requirements you have to fulfill. First, choose a theory you think is most likely to be true. Then, give a reason why you think the theory you chose is most likely to be true. Then, give another reason. You have to write this in a minimum of 200 words. This lesson, we do not only have an essay to write, but also a quiz. The quiz consists of multiple choice answers and open-ended questions. To do well on the test, it's a good idea to get your class notes out and study them. Check every question thoroughly before submitting your answers, because there are some sneaky questions. Pay extra attention if the sentence has denying statements. For example, which of these is not a characteristic of the Unomas theory? Also, take note that if you refresh the page or close the page, the questions will be different every time. Let's look at a question together. The question is, natural progression is ... To answer this question, we need to look back at the lesson. Where was natural progression mentioned? Looking at the lesson, natural progression was mentioned in the theory of Hocus Pocus. I quote from the lesson, "This term, natural progression, simply means that nature has a tendency to force specific habits upon humans who react differently than a magical person would." The best thing is to paraphrase this sentence. Paraphrasing means you say the same thing, but change it to your own words, like explaining something to someone else. If you copy the sentence from the lesson, that could be considered plagiarism, which is not allowed. When doing the quiz, reread your answers carefully and look at your notes. Thank you for watching and good luck with the essay and quiz.